what's going on, guys? Realm Gaming here, back into the video. Today's episode, we're taking a look at the Affliction Warlock for Phase 3 of Season of Discovery. So we're going to go over talents, runes, and rotation in this guide. So let's first start on the Affliction side of things. I know that this is called an Affliction Warlock guide, but we have most points in Destruction. The reason it's called an Affliction Warlock guide is because we're focusing more on dots with this build. So it is kind of weird, right? We have more points in Destruction than Affliction, but this is still going to be considered the Affliction build, right? So let's get started with talents on the Affliction side. Suppression. 2 points here reduces the chance for enemies to resist your Affliction spells by 4%. That's very important. And then 5 points into Improved Corruption, so reduces the casting time of Corruption by 2 seconds, making it instant cast. We have Improved Life Tap, increases the amount of mana rewarded by your Life Tap spell by 20%. Very good to just, in general, sustain your mana pool during a fight. We have 5 points into Improved Drain Life. And the reason that we're putting so many points into Improved Drain Life, right, is because we are running Master Channeler here, which your Drain Life is no longer channeled, so we just cast it, it shoots out Drain Life, and then we can cast other spells freely, which is very nice. Now, a lot of people argue you could run Demonic Tactics, and maybe you could. I'm not saying you can't, but in my opinion, you want to run Master Channeler, because once we go down to Nightfall, your Corruption and Drain Life spells have a 4% chance to cause you to enter the Shadow Trance. So, you know, being able to constantly keep a Drain Life out there means we can constantly attempt to proc Nightfall for those instant cast Shadow Bolts. And then we have 1 point in here as well in Amplify Curse on a 3-minute cooldown. Increases the effect of your Curse of Weakness, Curse of Agony by 50%, or your next Curse of Exhaustion by 20%. Last 30 seconds. More of a utility spell, right? We're not going to be doing much with Curse of Agony. In this build, we're going to be using Curse of Recklessness instead. So, you know, you could put that into something else potentially, but I thought that, you know, Amplify Curse just probably makes the most sense. You can get some value out of that, just in terms of utility, right? Okay, so that's the Affliction side. Let's go to Demonology. 3 points in Improved Imp. Increase the effect of your Imp's Firebolt, Fire Shield, and Blood Pact by 30%. Super strong. Definitely want to put 3 points into that. We'll put 5 points into Improved Shadow Bolt. Increases shadow damage dealt to the target by 20% until 4 non-periodic spell damage sources are applied. Lasts for a maximum of 12 seconds. We're going to put 5 points into Bane, reduces the casting time of your Shadow Bolt and Immolate spells by half a second, and your Soulfire by 2 seconds. 2 points into Improved Firebolt, reduces the cast time of your Imp's Firebolt spell by 1 second. 5 points into Devastation, increases the crit chance of your Destruction spells by 5%. 2 points into Destructive Reach, increases the range of your Destruction spells by 20%. And then 1 point here into Ruin, increases the critical strike damage bonus of your Destruction spells by 100%. So, of course, all this really is to buff Shadow Bolt and your Imp's Firebolts. Okay, let's get into runes really quick. Let's take a look at the Headroom Pandemic. Periodic damage from Corruption, Unstable Affliction, Curse of Agony, Immolate, Curse of Doom, and Siphon Life abilities can now be critical strikes. So, that's pretty strong, and you would think it would scale really well with Demonic Tactics, and I think it does. But again, going back to Master Channeler that we talked about earlier, I think we're going to want to run Master Channeler with Improved Corruption, right, for these Nightfall procs, right? So we're going to be getting all these Shadow Bolts that come out, and these Shadow Bolts are going to be buffed by our Destruction tree. So that's kind of the idea here. And then also looking at the rest of the head runes here, we have Backdraft, your Conflagrate. Ability grants 30% spellcasting haste for 10 seconds. We're not running Conflagrate, so that's not useful to us. And then Vengeance, when activated, this ability temporarily grants increased health. It's basically a defensive here. And we are, you know, we'd rather have more damage than defensive. All right, let's take a look at the new wrist runes as well. Immolation Aura burns enemies for X amount of damage every 2 seconds and reduces all magic damage taken by 10%. Lasts until canceled, so it's just going to be like an AoE effect. We have Summon Felguard, so summons you a pet, and this benefits from all talents and effects that trigger from or benefit any other demon minions. So we're not really going deep into demonology, so he's not going to be super powerful, unfortunately. So that's why we run, of course, Unstable Affliction. So Shadow Energy slowly destroys the target for X amount of damage over 15 seconds. In addition, if the Unstable Affliction is dispelled, it'll do more damage, and it will also silence the target. So really strong to run that. We're also going to be running Haunt here. So the reason for this, so unleash a ghostly soul on the enemy, dealing X amount of damage, and increasing all shadow damage over time that you deal to that target by 20%. So that's going to put the haunt effect on the target, and as long as that haunt effect is up, you're going to be doing 20% more shadow damage to that target, right? So we're going to be, everything's going to be getting buffed. Our shadow bolts are going to be getting buffed. Our corruptions, any sort of shadow damage, right, that we're sending out, it's going to get buffed by 20%. All right, on the waist, we're running Grimoire of Synergy. So basically, you and your pet have a 5% chance to make the other one deal 25% more damage. So he's buffing you, you're buffing him, and it's just kind of going back and forth, and just extra damage basically from this rune. All right, then in the leg rune, we don't have much to run, right? Demonic Grace, dodge chance, we're not going to be using that. Everlasting Affliction to refresh corruption, not that strong. It's just saving 1 second on corruption. I mean, it's one less thing to keep track of, but I don't think it's super strong. And then Incinerate, right? We're not going to be running Incinerate, right? Because we'd rather be running Shadow Bolt. We'd rather be casting Shadow Bolt. So that leaves us with Demonic Pact. Your pet's critical strikes, apply Demonic Pact to your party members for 45 seconds, and that's going to increase their spell damage and healing by 10%, whichever's higher. So Demonic Pact, ton of value there, so that's why we run it. They're going to want to keep you in the spellcaster group due to this rune. And then in the feat rune, we're running Demonic Knowledge, right? Just going to be a big buff to our overall spell damage based on your demon's total stamina plus intellect, 10% of that. All right, now let's talk about the general rotation or priority, whatever you want to call it, right? Your main priority is going to be Curse of Recklessness. So if you're not familiar with what Curse of Recklessness is, it's going to increase the enemy's attack power, but reduce its armor, right? So it's kind of like the Warlock Sunder Armor effect. So your entire raid is going to benefit from this. So that's why it's more important than something like Curse of Agony, because overall as a raid, you're gonna get more damage out of Curse of Recklessness than you would out of you using Curse of Agony. So up next, we want to do Haunt on cooldown. And the reason you're going to do Haunt before all of your dots is because we want to get that lingering effect, right? So Haunt puts out a 20% damage buff for our shadow damage. So we want to get Haunt out first and then apply our dots. So from here, we'll put out Corruption, Unstable Affliction, and Immolate. And then I did forget one thing here. After Immolate, you will want to drain life, and you'll want to keep drain life up for as long as you possibly can. So in between Corruption, Unstable Affliction, Immolate, and drain life, that's where the Shadow Bolts come in. So you will Shadow Bolt in between dot refreshes, and then also, of course, on your Nightfall procs here. Now, one thing to know with Nightfall is it does actually proc with the Shadow Bolt Volley rune. So that's going to be this rune here, and you can send out 5 instant cast Shadow Bolts, which is kind of cool. But for single target, right, we're running Haunt. And then our very last step is going to be Shadow Burn. So you're going to be using Shadow Burn only when you're moving around, and if your dots are, all your dots are up and you have to move and you can't cast a Shadow Bolt, then you can Shadow Burn here. So I didn't cover it earlier, but it's on a 15-second cooldown, and it will do 87 to 99 shadow damage. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for this guide. I think it'll be very interesting to see how Affliction Warlock does play out this phase. I'll probably also do a Destruction Warlock guide at some point. I'm not saying Affliction's better than Destruction or Destruction's better than Affliction right now. We'll just have to see. But this seems to be the kind of general consensus for Affliction Warlock at the moment. So guys, thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We will see you all in the next one.